Hello and welcome to Viewpoints, a podcast brought to you by FOV Ventures. Viewpoints is the show where we talk to the founders, investors, entrepreneurs, builders and creators of the metaverse. And I'm really pleased to have with me today Alvin Wang Grayling. And I think we know all of your background. Most people are following you on Twitter, have kind of seen you at these sorts of events before. But maybe just a quick intro.
Sure. I think, I guess high level, I'm the HTC China president, and I'm also the head of the IVRA, or actually the vice chair of the IVRA, the Industry VR Alliance in China, as well as the president of the VRVCA, the Virtual Reality Venture Capital Alliance. I'm also, I guess, head of the China and the Israel Vive teams as well. So.
Yeah, awesome. And I guess, full disclosure, myself and Alvin have been, were colleagues at HTC for many years. And Alvin, you're actually an investor in, HTC is an investor in this platform that we're recording in today, Engage.
Yes, absolutely. Engage. And in fact, I was the one that initiated the discussions to do that investment, because I really am very impressed with what the Engage team has done with their platform, and the flexibility of this platform to work on so many different devices, and to be able to do what we're doing today. And it's amazing. We've been using it over the last year to 2 years for a number of major events.
Maybe talk us through this location that we're about to step into. I think for this episode, we wanted to do something a bit different, not just sit on a couch, but actually explore this location that you built for one of your events. Maybe tell us a bit more about that event before we step in.
Sure. Yeah, actually, this event was a very special event. It's a multi-layer event or venue, which is a little unusual for what we've been doing. And it was created for the Vive Flow launch back in, I think, October of last year. So it's, we had both, the actual launch activities here. We also had a mini concert at the end of the event, and a lot of interactions. And the beautiful thing about this venue is that it's got so many layers so that people can use it for pre and post-event social, because we really want to create something that allow people to find their own space to have that conversation with people, just like you do in the hallways and, in the rest areas or the social areas of a normal conference.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. All right. Well, I want to get the conversation started. So let's move on out to the first area. If you follow me. All right. So, I guess any show with HTC and yourself probably wouldn't be complete without talking about what actually HTC Vive is doing on the hardware space. And as this event was the launch for this device here, maybe if you grab that there. I actually got to try this for the very first time only last week. And I have to say I was impressed. Like it was very, maybe it would be great if I had one at home, because I think this is a really great device, a great new form factor. But can you talk us through what thinking went into bringing a device in this form factor?
Yeah, I think one of the key complaints that we've gotten a lot of is really about the weight and comfort of the existing devices, and especially when you use it for more than a short session. So we really wanted to create something that was much lighter and much thinner and much more approachable, and something that looked more like glasses or small goggles, so that it became more approachable, right? Because a lot of people feel like, oh, I don't really want to put a box on my head. It's just kind of socially a little bit of a stigma, and there would be no way people would want to put it on for some cases too, because it's the old devices maybe would mess up their hair or mess up their makeup. Something like this, which looks and feels like glasses, and you wear them like glasses, and it folds up like glasses, becomes much more approachable. So in fact, females have found this to be very attractive, where we actually find a lot of audiences that used to not want to use VR, after seeing this device, they would actually proactively seek it out. So I think, even though this is the first generation of a thin and light device, I'm really excited about the potential for this to expand our audience.
Yeah, exactly. And I also thought it would be quite fun in this show to actually bring in some of your tweets. And you guys actually did some research here. Maybe talk us through what you found when you were thinking about this kind of newer, thinner, lighter form factor.
Yeah, so I think the key is really making it more comfortable, because any device that you would wear a long time, it has to be comfortable. And having a lighter weight was really, really key for us. And the research that we actually did was we compared the old, Vive focus devices to these thin and light devices, and we had male and female comparisons. And what we found was that the females were 83% more comfortable and more satisfied with that product experience with the thinner and lighter products. Now, of course, the males also had improvement, but it was only about half as much improvement, because they had stronger necks and they were more acceptable with the existing products. But for females, they just was something that kept them from even trying VR. Another thing that we found was very interesting was for younger users that are under 20, and then for older users that were over 50, they also had significant increases. They essentially, also were in the 70 to 80% range in terms of improvements of comfort level and satisfaction level. So we feel like the issue with VR adoption in the last 5 years is, I would say 80 to 90% of users are male, and probably in the adult range of maybe 20 to 40. Right, as a primary user base. And what we would like to do is to get as many users outside of that group as possible to start using VR. And devices like this is going to be able to attract that user base. And in fact, what we find is that now there's starting to be a number of other companies starting to announce products that are similar, which I think it's good that we're the trendsetter to show people the value of this device.
Exactly. I think one thing that was a revelation for me, just putting on the device, you really, we're both in standalone devices. Now, I love having one on my desk. I can just slip it on and I'm in VR. But actually having the thinner lens, not having a strap that goes over your head just makes it much more comfortable. So if we're doing a podcast like this, I've got a device on for an hour, like having something like that is better. I guess the trade-off though, right, is this device, you made the decision to ship it without controllers and use the phone. And then also it's still to make it much lighter, like batteries aren't getting light, super quick or as quick as we'd like to. So maybe talk through some of the trade-offs and the decisions that went into this, because it still feels like this is a stepping stone to what we might have in maybe 2 years. But what are your thoughts on that?
This is the first generation of a thin light, so there's always going to be trade-offs. You're never going to get a perfect product, first time out. But so we, like you said, we had to make some compromises. The processors in there are a little bit less than you would see, like with the Focus 3 that I'm using right now. We're using an XR2. That one is using an XR1. So because of the smaller shape, you're not able to get rid of as much heat, right? Dissipate as much heat as you would with a larger fan and larger space. The other thing is the screen. We actually chose to use a smaller resolution and screen and a little bit smaller lens, the Pancake lenses. So Pancake lenses, the benefit is it's super thin and much lighter, but also the FOV is a little bit less. So you're looking at probably around 100 degrees versus 120 degrees with the Focus 3. So you give up a little bit on the fidelity, but you make it up for on the comfort and convenience side. And so it is something that will take a little bit of time for to get that thin and light that will satisfy all your needs. And I think, as you said, probably the biggest compromise is really the lack of the 6 degrees of freedom controllers. And the one of the key reasons is by putting 4 cameras on the device like this, like we do with the Focus 3, it would need to be larger, it would need to have bigger batteries, and that the processor that's on there right now wouldn't be able to handle it. So we had to make some compromises. But if you do have hand tracking, that the lack of a controller becomes less of a hindrance.
Yeah, I think it is great that you compare that with the phone. If you're just using it for entertainment or media, or I've seen tweets of you with the headset on a plane, like actually you kind of don't want to have to pack in your suitcase another controller. So being able to use either your phone or hand tracking, I think that makes sense. So
yeah,
let's assume.
I've been traveling a lot with this device, and I got to tell you, it's so easy to travel with, because I've traveled a lot before with the PC-based VR when they first came out, and that was a pain in the ass. And then it got a little bit better with the Focus and having the 2 controllers, but it still took up pretty much your entire backpack. So I'm really liking the convenience of the portability of this device.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, hopefully we've taken one of the big steps towards kind of figuring out how to make VR more mainstream. And that was always the, the form factor. Still some work to do on the price, but once we have that form factor and the price, I think these devices, I mean, they're already flying off the shelves. We've seen a lot of headsets in market over Christmas, and then I think 2022, that's only going to grow. The next piece of the puzzle is then the content, right? So maybe talk through that. I mean,
actually,
what content have you seen on?
Before we move to content, before we move to content, I actually do want to address the price issue, because I hear a lot of people say, oh, price is the big roadblock that is keeping people from buying VR. I actually have to say, I really don't believe it. I don't think that's really the key, because, like you're saying, even, right now in the market, you can buy $300 devices that are very, very capable. And, we're there over last year, there's been significant growth in the market, so that we are seeing a growth there. But I don't think prices, even a price, device like this, which is, a premium, thin and light, and we're talking about $5, right? So it's the price of a mid-tier phone. This is like an economy Apple phone would be about this price. So it's not something that people can't afford. It's really about, do people see the value in it, and is there something that they would have to have this for to use, or a use case that they would have to have this type of device. I think that's really the bigger key. Even if it was $1,000, a must-have use case, the price wouldn't be a matter. So I think there was something that actually Palmer Luckey posted in this Twitter maybe like a year ago. He said, the price isn't the issue. Why? Because even if you gave it for free, you still have 50% of people who don't use it. Well, which, what he's talking about is half of people who buy VR devices, maybe the older generation ones, they just leave them in their shelf, after the first couple months, right? So in that case, it's to these people, it's actually free, but they're still not using it. So this kind of takes us to your last question, which was content, because I think content is actually the key to driving adoption, not price.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember hearing you talk about what you call the toothbrush test, which is, what is that content that makes you reach for your device, once or twice a day? We can justify the price of our phones because we're literally touching them. I don't know what the research says, like, 30, 40 different
about
times
100
a day.
to 150 times a day.
100, yeah, exactly. What is the content? Do you think? I think gaming is clear. Like, if you're a gamer, being immersed in a VR device, there is now a lot of great gaming content, and there's a lot more in its way. What are the things outside of gaming that become the daily drivers for VR?
Well, I think it really depends on what what your intention is for using. Some people use it for fitness, and I know a lot of fitness people, they do use it every day. I actually use VR very frequently for fitness. In fact, I was just locked in quarantine for 3 weeks, and instead of bringing barbells, I actually brought my VR device, and I used it as part of my fitness routine in a very small space. And I know a lot of people actually make that part of their routine. The other thing is, I think once we start integrating this into our normal work and school life, so for young people, their school life, and for adults, their work life, it becomes that daily activity that you would use it for. We're like what we're doing today, right now, with our meeting. We're essentially 10,000 miles away from each other. We actually feel like we're next to each other, right? And the value of having that closeness, that face interaction, is going to be more and more important. And last year, Accenture, I think, bought 60,000 VR devices to give away to their team, and they're talking to us now about saying, how can we get these thin and light devices, because they're more convenient for our business travelers. Once the company starts issuing these to their staff as a way to create closeness between the teams, as well as a way for them to talk to their customers, I think then you actually have that mission critical need, right? That forces you to use it daily. Once you're using it daily, then you start finding other interactions, like you're saying, gaming, or using it for virtual meditation, using it to do art and culture, So it's just, there's thousands and thousands of apps out there. A lot of people just haven't had a chance to go explore it. I mean, there's always niche markets like military or medical or real estate design or things like that they're already using these on a daily basis, right? Because that's their job. But to get into the mass market, I think we need to change people's perception that this is not something that is just a nice to have gimmick, that it actually does impact your effectiveness in your daily work life.
Makes sense. Cool. So we're going to go and check out some more of this venue. So if you follow me, we're going to go down to the next floor here. So up these stairs. Go down. And Alvin, who actually designed, or what went into the design of this location?
So this was a kind of a group effort between our team in China, the Creative Labs team, and also the team at Engage. So it was definitely a group effort. Yeah. So and actually, I think that there was a niche. Probably the bulk of it was the China team that helped to create this design. And then we work with the other teams to refine it. But we just wanted to create something that was something that you wouldn't see in the real world, and also something that was relatively simple to render, so that no matter what device you were in, even with a complex multi-layer structure, it would not be a difficult thing for people to be able to have a good experience with. So, and then we added in some elements like the swimming pool and reflection that made it kind of a fun environment, and we put posters around, and the colors were consistent with the theme colors of the Vive Flow launch. So this is why we have kind of the dreamy, more pastel type feel.
Yeah, I love that this is one of those kind of, when people talk about future jobs in the metaverse, I think definitely kind of world builder or metaverse architect is one of those. Let's maybe turn our attention away from VR and the hardware, more into the kind of conceptual. 21, there was such a huge buzz about the metaverse. I think, for people like us, we've been talking about these topics for, 5, 6, and 7 years. And of course, it goes, way back further than that. But now that this has come into the mainstream, I'd love to get your views on some of these things. So we've, again, pulled up some of your tweets, and you had this tweet here, which was pretty comprehensive, actually, that just had some of your thoughts, some of the opportunities, some of the predictions. So maybe we could dive in. I think this is the first question anyone has to ask is like, what is your definition of the metaverse, if you have one, or just what is the metaverse?
I think the simple. I mean, there's so many definitions, and because of there's so many definitions, there's a lot of confusion out there. And I think the simple way that I like to explain to people when there's not a lot of time is that it is essentially the internet that we've spent the last 30, 40 years building, that has been very 2D focused and video focused, and moving it to become more 3D focused. And instead of using phones and PCs to access it, you start using immersive devices, VR, AR devices, XR devices to access it. So you're now inhabiting a space instead of just consuming content. So it's not something that is completely new and different. It's actually built on all of the same infrastructure of the existing internet, except now you're really more focused on 3D information. But this is not saying, hey, the 2D internet will go away. Right? But this new 3D focused internet of the metaverse will give you essentially more of a replacement for the existing world. It actually helps you to remove geographical as well as distance boundaries that we have physically. So it allows you to eliminate the need for commuting, eliminate the need for a lot of business travel, eliminate the need to go to the grocery store, some of the things that you physically do today that you spend a lot of time on. And the other thing is, I think if you look at this particular slide that you just brought up, it expands but not replaces. It's really about moving from websites and apps to worlds and experiences, moving from a specific idea of a particular app to having a universal ID and universal avatar. We were talking about this, before the event, that you wanted to bring in your Ready Player Me avatar that can be more cross environment. I think we're going to see more of that coming in the near future, where more apps will support these cross platform avatars, and having a common ID system instead of having multiple IDs across every single app and remembering a ton of different passwords. You want to have that seamless ability to jump back and forth between spaces. So it's kind of like what Ready Player One described for us in the 2018 movie, with Spielberg, and the novel by Ernest Cline. I think that actually did a pretty good job of kind of describing the potential experience, but in a less dystopian physical world. Right? I think that the problem with almost all of these sci-fi movies is that they always have a shitty physical world that's dystopian, and then people escape to this virtual world to try to find some happiness or some freedom. What I think is actually what we would like to get is to have both a utopian physical world and a utopian virtual world where you can decide when you want to go in and out of each one depending on your use cases. I think a lot of people are going to spend a lot of time in this new metaverse, but it actually gives us more time back that we used to waste to spend time in the physical world. You know, maybe we can be more productive in 3 or 4 days of work than we would in 5 days of work. So maybe the work week can actually get a little bit shorter, and we have longer weekends. You know, we have less travel, so we can spend time with our families instead of on the road and in airports. So all of this time that we regain, we can then put it on to, you know, our loved ones or on our health or on our hobbies. But again, I do want to emphasize that even with this 3D world, we're not getting rid of a phone or PCs. They're still going to be around, and you can still access all of this 3D world in a 2D platform and on a 2D screen. It just won't be as immersive, and it won't be having that optimal experience. Right. So in terms of the business models, there might be some changes as well. Now, instead of being very ad focused, which is what we see today on the kind of existing internet, it will probably start to move to more virtual commerce and what I call live to earn. Where people start actually just working in the metaverse, and it takes away that geographic boundary. No matter where you are, as long as you have a headset, you can go to this virtual office and do your virtual job. I think in a lot of white-collar type work, it really doesn't matter where you are. And also even things like education, right? If you can educate in a room, you can educate in a virtual room or a virtual classroom, and instead of teaching, 20 or 30 students, you can teach to hundreds or maybe thousands of students. Right? So I think those are kind of things that we're going to see some new business models be created because of this new medium that's coming. And right now the current social environment is that we're going out gathering followers, we're gathering likes. That's what we see to create our personal status. In this virtual environment, what we're going to find is that we're going to gather memories. We're going to gather friendships the way we do today in the physical world. So this virtual world is actually in a lot of ways much more akin to the real world than it is to the digital, 2D world of the internet today.
Yeah. And let's talk about, so, I mean, you had this tweet as well that I thought this was very interesting. FOV Ventures, we think a lot about Web3 being, more user ownership than we maybe have with some of the platforms in Web2, but also starts to bring in thinking about, how we think about these new economies, how we think about our identities, should some of that be decentralized? Like there's so many interesting things happening in Web3. And I think a lot of those go into the metaverse, but you're saying clearly here, for you, Web3 doesn't equal the metaverse. So maybe you could just pull that apart for us and expand on that thought.
So I think I want to separate the concept of Web 3.0 from Web 3, right? And it's a little bit of maybe a semantic distinction, but for a lot of people, Web 3 is talking about it has to be decentralized. It has to use crypto. You have to use ENS instead of DNS and all these other things, right? Everything's going to be paid only in crypto. I actually don't think that the metaverse requires you to be fully decentralized. In fact, I think a lot of the metaverse will be centralized in a lot of ways today, that the internet is centralized, and it brings efficiencies from the centralization. There are certain aspects of decentralization that is appealing and would make a metaverse experience great. But it is not something that you have to actually exist.
Yeah, I think for me, the crucial thing is that, there's also a lot of Web3 things which aren't metaverse, right? I mean, there's a lot of value in Web3 and DeFi and things like that, which don't necessarily come immediately into the metaverse. But let's maybe, I've pulled up this slide from one of your tweets talking about the opportunities. And I just want to run through two of them. First of all, we kind of touched on this already as we talked about, people actually need, we need metaverse architects to come in and build spaces like this. You mentioned here, like new types of goods and services manifest in this new economy. Maybe you can kind of explain what you mean by that. And
but in terms of goods as well, right? If you see all the virtual goods, virtual sneakers or NFTs or virtual clothes out there, a lot of these products are going to be part of people's commerce decisions, that they want to look and feel good, and they want to individualize themselves with with what they have virtually. And that economy, that virtual economy, can be as big in some cases as the physical versions. Like I think in Roblox, people were selling Gucci purses for more than the physical version of that same purse, which is crazy to me that something that has essentially zero incremental cost can be sold at thousands of US dollars to kids to buy for their Roblox account, right? So I think that's something that will be quite interesting, even beyond this kind of early craze of just NFT collection, but I think just virtual goods in day-to-day use.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we're going to see the birth of a lot of brands for the metaverse, and also those brands are going to need creators and designers. So if you're if you're at London College of Fashion and you're a young budding designer, actually you're going to be thinking about making real collections, but you're probably first of all going to be thinking about how do I make my first digital collections. But anyway, that's a whole nother topic. Maybe we could talk about big opportunity of the metaverse. Like what are those things that will affect us over 10, 20, 30 years? Maybe talk about these two of these bottom ones, the fact that the metaverse will create a more egalitarian society, and then maybe just touch very quickly after that on how we think the metaverse could potentially help to play a role in alleviating climate crisis.
Absolutely, yeah. I think egalitarian society, if you think about it, what makes something egalitarian is when everybody has access to the same type of resources, right? And in the virtual world, we really are not restricted, right? It's somebody who has $1 billion or somebody who has $1,000. If they have a headset, they can go have that experience. They can go to Mars. They can go underwater. They can go back to the Egyptian times in history, right? So they are not limited in their experience, no matter what their social economic class is. So I think that's something that is quite powerful because that makes everybody a lot more equal. Now, beyond just experiences, I think it also, because we're all represented by our avatars, we're no longer judged by the color of our skin or our height. So we don't necessarily have to spend all this money buying physical goods that we do today to create status. So I think that's something that actually then creates a lot more equality again, because it's a lot cheaper to buy a virtual, hopefully, it's a lot cheaper to buy a virtual suit than it is to buy a real one. And it's a lot less strain on the environment as well, right? And the other thing that I think makes it a lot more egalitarian is that now, no matter where you were born, you have access to the same resources as anybody else anywhere in the world. If you think about, there was something that Warren Buffett said, I think that was actually quite powerful. Everybody in the U.S. won the genetic lottery because you were born in the U.S., in a time of non-war where the economics were growing for decades, and you just have more opportunities than everybody else, right? So it's not that there was something about you that made you better. You just were in a better environment. Now, if the accessibility of these devices were the same everywhere, even if you're born in Bangladesh or in India or in wherever, Mongolia, right? You have the same resources and access as somebody in Silicon Valley or New York or London, right? And I think that's something that will allow us to find a lot more talent that were missed before. People that could only access their local resources that, had great ideas but never were discovered. And so now we can bring these people and rise them up to the top. And, we might be finding an Einstein every month instead of every few decades, right? I mean, I think that really excites me because you will allow anybody anywhere to access the best education, anyone anywhere, to be able to express and have the impact of their full potential versus that limited impact that they had because of their geographic location or their social economic class they were born into.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think a lot of people could listen to this discussion and say, hey, well, that seems very ideal or that seems very optimistic, and I think in many ways it is, but I think the important reason to have those discussions now is as we go about building this, we're building these economies, we're building these worlds, thinking about what are the devices that can access these spaces and thinking about that accessibility from the ground up, rather than getting to a space in 10 years time where it's like, oh no, actually only this group of people has access to this part of the metaverse, whereas these people over here have this device or this access. So I think it is a really important topic.
I think it's actually really important for the industry right now to spend a little bit more time on the interoperability and the standardization across worlds, across devices, across development tools, so that we have that interoperability and accessibility that we were talking about. In fact, one of the things I wanted to mention before we started was about the phase of development of the metaverse, right? Because what we have today is, there's a lot of people calling them their own worlds or apps that are a metaverse, right? They're saying, oh, I have the so-and-so metaverse. I actually don't see that as a metaverse. Those are just individual virtual worlds, right? And none of them are tied together today. What I would like to see is that we move away from this walled garden individual virtual worlds model to, probably it'll take us a few years, but we'll get to a more regionalized metaverse where maybe in China, in the US, or in Europe, there'll be groups of countries that will have similar standards, similar IDs, similar currencies that will then have them work together. And then long term, I'm not that long, but let's say 5 to 10 years, we would get to where we are today with the internet, where 98% of the internet is actually accessible to almost all people, right? There's going to be certain sites in certain countries that are blocked for political or other reasons, but most of the internet is accessible. And we're going to hopefully get to that point where most of the metaverse will be accessible to everybody, no matter what device you're using and no matter what physical country you're in. And I think that actually then gets rid of the geographic borders that we have around the world. And by having that, we're going to have a lot more understanding of each other. And the more understanding we have of each other, the less conflict we will have, right? So I think that's something that I would like the metaverse to actually help bring the world closer together, so we have essentially one virtual world. We may have, our US citizenship or China citizenship or UK citizenship, but in the virtual world, we're going to have one ID, and we're going to feel like we're part of one universe.
Certainly a great vision to have. Cool. So let's head on down to our last spot in this venue. If you follow me. All right, excellent. So now we can take a bit of a breather. We're sat down. We're on the lower floor of this amazing Flow venue. And I just wanted to end this discussion with another tweet of yours. So you had a tweet where you put up your XR trends and predictions for 2022, but then also looking a bit further out, the coming decade metaverse predictions. So I'm going to dive into a few of those. Let me put that one back down here. Okay. So let's go to, if I can pick it up, the XR trends. All right, so there's just maybe one. We've already talked about form factor. We've already talked about LBVR. Maybe we could just talk about Cloud XR, because I think one of the things that we'll probably need to get more people into XR and actually to enable these thinner form factors is the ability to drive some of the processing power through the cloud. So yeah, give us your take. Where are we at currently with Cloud XR, and how do you see that developing over the next year?
Okay, I mean, the funny thing is actually about 5 years ago, I worked with the local cable network in China, in one of the provinces in China, to actually set up the first commercialized Cloud XR solution. This is 5 to 6 years ago, so it's crazy back then. The performance was really bad, and the users complained a lot. But they actually delivered it to users, and it was working with our initial Vive devices and working through a cable network, not even the 5G network, right? So it is actually possible to do it. It hasn't been done well for. I think the key reason is that networks up to about now have really just not been fast enough and have had a huge issue with latency. With video, if you have a little latency, if it's got a little hiccup, you just stream stops and you keep going, right? But with a VR experience, if you have a hiccup, if you have more than a 20 or 30 second latency, you start getting sick. Right? I think that's really something that is fundamentally different between streaming video versus streaming VR. And so now with 5G everywhere, and and particularly like China right now, I think it has 60% of the world's 5G towers. Right? So the accessibility of high performance, or high bandwidth, low latency networks are just really not an issue anymore in China. It's actually, I think, cloud networks and cloud streaming for XR is going to be much more accessible. In fact, even at CES just a month ago, HTC demonstrated a live cloud streaming XR solution from multiple miles away where the servers were to our demo suite. And 3 years ago, we actually demonstrated at MWC, but that was more with a local server that was maybe only 50 feet away, or maybe 100 feet away. So I think we're really getting there. And when it does happen, it will allow the devices that we started this conversation with, the flow type of devices, to have super high fidelity experiences, because now it's no longer being rendered on the little mobile chip that's on the device. It's all going to be rendered in high-end NVIDIA or AMD or whatever devices they're going to use at the time, and streamed over the network, and be able to give you that super kind of PC type VR experience with a mobile chip. And to be able to do that, then now you can actually have a little tiny battery and be able to perform what used to take 100 watts per per PC to operate on those NVIDIA cards, right? So you can do it on just a couple of 3 or 4 watts, right? So I think that's something that is going to be really changing the fidelity that you get on these mobile devices, and bring the price down as well, because now you don't need to get the latest and highest end mobile chips that are going to be more expensive, because every time you jump a generation, the new chips are like 2 or 3x the price of the last generation. So you can bring that price down to even more accessible to just about anybody.
Okay, great. So now let's go on to these coming decade metaverse predictions. And again, we just have time to dwell on a few of these, but I wanted to talk about, first of all, you have the statement in the middle, which is saying more new billionaires created by the metaverse than the internet. I'm wondering, are those billionaires that are creators, or is it actually founders that are building the metaverse unicorns of the future?
I actually see them as a combination of people who are the new creators, and probably the creators will make money, but I think it'll be the founders, the ones that are creating the solutions, the apps, the platforms, and the worlds that are going to be the billionaires. We're spending, let's say, 5 hours, 6 hours a day on the internet today, right? In the near future, 5 or 10 years, we're going to be spending 10 to 15 hours a day in the metaverse. So our time will be predominantly actually in these virtual worlds. Right? Now, we may, when I say the metaverse, it may even include some of these kind of virtual overlay AR metaverse, which you may see things kind of integrated together with the physical world. But at the same time, it is still going to be a device that's on your head. And that device is going to be your primary conduit of communication to each other and to the rest of the world, and to machines. So that's going to create a lot more opportunity for people to create new commerce models, to create new entertainment models, to create new work and labor models, right? So there's going to be so many things that are not invented yet that will be created. With the last 10 or 20 years of the internet, we've really just started to create a very small portion of the physical world on the digital, on this kind of digital landscape. In this new world, pretty much every aspect of our physical world can be recreated, and every aspect of the world that we can imagine that is not our physical world can be recreated. So the opportunities for interactions, for experiences, for information, it's going to be an order of magnitude more. So I am very hopeful. And the tools that are going to be needed to do it, just having, let's say, with the mobile internet, we created things like Uber and TikTok or YouTube. These things that took advantage of the mobility and the higher bandwidth. Now we have mobility, high bandwidth, low latency, full immersion, multimodal communication, full immersion, and then also a integration of the real world with the physical world. There's so many more modes of operation, so many more types of interactions that we'll have than we've ever had with any medium in the past. So this is why I'm so hopeful. And there's so few of things that have been created. If you look at how many apps right now, even on the best app stores, we're talking about 3,000 or 4,000 apps out there. You know, if you look at the app stores on Android or Apple, you're talking about 5 or 6 million apps, right? And if you look at, you know, websites on the internet, you're talking about, you know, hundreds of millions of websites. So there's so many things that have not been created that will be created over the next 10 or 20 or 30 years. I have very high confidence that there'll be more billionaires being created out of this new medium than anything we've ever seen before.
That's certainly our thesis at FOV Ventures. You know, we're looking to invest in founders that are building towards this metaverse. So what are the addressable opportunities? Like if you were a founder building today, where do you think the gaps are or the opportunities to actually go and build a new company? And I guess, what have you been looking at with your lens of, you know, what HTC needs, but also what an investor like Vivex has been seeing and looking for?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, in any new revolution, you know, the beginning, the tools and picks are always the first group of companies or solutions that are the most needed and will find their first success. So the new game engines, or the tools for creating avatars, or tools for creating virtual goods, or, you know, services that link people together, you know, ID services, or payment services, or search services, you know, those kind of things are going to be needed because they don't exist, or some of them are not very mature, or some of them don't exist at all. Right? I think those kind of things are going to be the first generation. And then it's going to be the actual apps that people use, the worlds that people go to. You know, those are going to be the next set. And then also kind of the commerce tools, the malls and the Amazons of the future. They're going to be, you know, that kind of commerce model. There's going to be, I think, advertising in a different way. How will advertising be done? How will we search for things? Because search right now requires you to go to the website, look at different, you know, tags, meta tags, content, you know, the text messages, the descriptions, and then, you know, who's linking to what. The Google type algorithms won't work anymore. So how would people find things? And you're not going to have a text of everything. You actually have an object. How do you classify these objects? You know, when you search, how do people find things? There's going to be so many questions that we haven't had to ask because we haven't worked in a 3D environment. We've just worked in a very well described that already had meta tags for everything. They already had the content was essentially clear text. Right now, how do you do it when everything is a 3D object? How do you know what people are looking for? What does it mean? And if those things keep interacting and changing, how do you describe it? Right. So there's so many things that services that need to be created. And also, I think every single service that we do today in the physical world, there will probably be a virtual equivalent of those things. There's going to be virtual services related to these. You know, you have, I think, like therapists. You know, virtual therapists are going to be it's very easy to operate, and anybody who is trained to do that can offer their services up to doing this. So I think that the one thing that's very interesting, I think, is that we don't have to say, hey, you need to find something that didn't exist. I think there's huge opportunities for entrepreneurs to say, I already know how to do something in the real world. I already know how to do something in the internet world. Now I just need to take that thing that I already know and build a version of it that suits this environment in this 3D, interconnected, interoperable, open world system. Right? So I think that's something that that makes a lot of sense, because I feel like entrepreneurs should try to do what they already understand instead of trying to just jump on a hot wave and say, okay, oh, metaverse is hot, I'm going to do a metaverse something. And, you know, right now, honestly, most metaverse projects I see are either scams or, you know, really aren't related to the metaverse, and they just call themselves the metaverse.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think the hype has just driven so much attention and talent into the space. But like, as with any hype cycle, you know, there's a few ideas that will stick. And I think everything else will be tossed out either as, you know, speculation or as just pure experimentation. You know, we need to go through those iterations. Like the internet in the early days, you know, in the early days of Web 2, there was so many new projects popping up. And you kind of have to go through that as an industry and a society to find out what things work. I think one thing that's interesting, what you said was, I think in the metaverse especially, there'll be a lot of things that we can just directly port from the real world into the virtual. But what we saw with the internet is like, as soon as you have a different medium, actually you need to find completely new paradigms that are native to the medium as well. So it will be a kind of blend of those two, right? It'll be the replication of, like, you know, I think everyone's looked at that Walmart video. Shopping in the metaverse won't look like pushing a shopping trolley down the mall, but you probably will have virtual malls in some sense, or there will be a new paradigm for how we search and access goods in the metaverse.
Absolutely. I think that there's a lot of things we don't know yet. So really the unknown unknowns are where a lot of the opportunities are, and people will discover them. And, you know, we're going to find that the world is even better than we expected, because just like, you know, 20 years ago, nobody thought the internet would be what we are experiencing today.
Awesome. Well, this has been a great conversation. We've covered a lot of space, from the things that are happening today all the way out to what might be happening in 20 years. So, you know, thanks a lot for all of your views. We could spend a lot more time talking about this, but I just want to thank you again for coming on to the Viewpoints show. And if people are interested in getting in touch or just keeping up with some of your views or your tweets, where should people find you?
Just A Graylin on Twitter, and Alvin Grayling on LinkedIn. So those are probably where I post a lot of my information or views. So, and, you know, studies that we do. And so yeah, welcome to follow me, and please give me your comments and feedback. I'd love to hear what you guys think.
Awesome. Great. Thanks again.